Hi, and welcome to Angie's Tasty Tuesday, brought to you by Transition Nutrition and Fitness Coaching. I'm Angie, and I'm here every Tuesday to bring you a new and delicious whole food plant-based recipe that you can incorporate into your family's weekly menu. Today, because of some technical difficulties a few of you had with hearing clearly, I'm trying a new microphone, so let me know if the sound quality is better and if you can hear me better, and we'll make sure and try to adjust and keep things going so that it's as clear as possible recording that you can have. I also am going to be leaving out the movement moments today and the meaningful meetups because I've got a 20-foot mic connected to me and we're just trying to see how it works for today. So let's get started. Today we're going to be doing cinnamon raisin bagels. I promised you that as soon as I could I would get this recipe out to you, and I've made it 3 or 4 times, and oh my goodness, my grandson walked around all weekend eating these bagels. So I know they're good even for those people who normally don't adhere to a whole food plant-based diet. So let's get going. All right, in order to get ready to make these bagels, you want to take 1 cup of raisins and put them in a microwave safe bowl and cover them with water. Microwave it for 45 seconds and then set your timer for 5 minutes to let the raisins fully plump. Then we're going to drain them and they're ready for our recipe. So I already have my 1 cup of plumped raisins here. And next we're going to activate our yeast. You're going to take 1/2 cup of very hot tap water and mix in 1.5 tablespoons of pure maple syrup. And this is going to be what feeds and activates our yeast. So we're going to mix that up really well, and then we're going to pour in 2 teaspoons of active dry yeast and mix together that water, maple syrup mixture with our yeast. Give it a good stir, and we're going to set it aside for 15 minutes to let the yeast activate. While that's activating, go ahead and measure out 500 grams of whole wheat pastry flour. Now I have made these with regular whole wheat and whole wheat pastry flour, and there's a world of difference. The density is much heavier with the straight whole wheat powder flour, and they didn't stay as moist as long, and it was much harder to get the raisins to work in. So I highly recommend the whole wheat pastry flour. Again, 500 grams, and have that set aside. Set your timer for 15 minutes and let your yeast rise. So to our 500 grams of whole wheat pastry flour, we're going to add 2.5 teaspoons of Ceylon cinnamon, 3 tablespoons of date sugar, 1 teaspoon of salt. And we're going to whisk that together until it's all mixed really well. You can do this while you're waiting for your yeast to activate. Then we're going to set it to the side and come right back. Now that our yeast is all activated, you can tell it has a nice inch or so of foam on the top. We're going to take that flour mixture that we made before and add our yeast, water, maple syrup mixture, and 3/4 of a cup of very warm water. Now I have a cup here, but I'm only going to start off with 3/4 of it. Usually I end up using almost the whole cup, but you don't want overly wet dough. And I'm going to start by mixing that together till it forms a dough ball. Now this does take a bit, and like I said, sometimes I have to use the extra water. I do weigh my flour, but I haven't weighed the water, and sometimes it just varies on how much moisture it takes to make it stick into a dough. You'll know I'm looking, and already there's a lot of extra flour, so I'm going to go ahead and add some more of that warm water. You don't want a dry dough, but you don't want a wet dough either. Now while that's coming together, we're also going to stir in our 1 cup of plumped raisins. And those are measured before plumping. So it's going to be quite a few raisins. This really helps keep the bagels moist after they're made. The savory bagels are good for about 3 days before they start to dry out. These have lasted 5 to 6 days, and I really like them. They even warm up quite nicely in the microwave. You can use a vegan sour cream cheese. I'm still experimenting. I did try making a cream cheese. I was not satisfied with the way it turned out. It's still a little too tart. Not quite as tasty as I want it. As soon as I get that perfected, we'll make a video on that. And I do want to add that last little bit of water. So this one ended up taking the whole cup of warm water. And when it gets to the point where you've got just almost no powder left in the bottom, I like to finish mixing it by hand. So you just want to take and scrape that spoon down and get your hands in there until it forms a nice dough ball. And you'll be able to tell. It's a nice soft dough, just like the savory ones were. And it starts to stick together really, really well. After we get it all mixed, you're going to put it onto a floured surface, and it's going to be kneaded for 10 minutes, just like the other recipe was for the savory bagels. And I will say that sometimes the raisins want to pop out. You just take them and stick them right back in. So I've got my dough ball all made. I'm going to pull over my wooden board that I use to knead my dough on. I'm going to add a little bit more of that whole wheat pastry flour to my board. My board isn't treated, so if I don't flour it well, the dough really does stick to it. And now we're just going to knead the dough for 10 minutes. So after we're done, we'll be right back. All right, that 10 minutes of kneading takes care of our movement moment for today for our upper body. Now that we're finished and we have our nice smooth dough ball, you're going to take a plastic or non-metallic, it can be glass bowl, make sure it's completely coated with water. Put your dough in there and turn it so that it gets completely moist on all edges. After you do that, you're going to cover it with a warm, wet tea towel and put it in either your proofing setting, or my oven has a keep warm setting that's about 100 degrees, and you're going to let it rise for 60 minutes, and in that time it should double in size. All right, after it has set for 60 minutes, you'll see it's doubled in size. We're going to punch it down, and you want to scrape off all the little dough bits. It does stick a little bit to the bottom, just like the savory one does. And just punch it down and stick it back in that warm place again for another 10 minutes. Meanwhile, you want to get your water boiling because we're going to form the donuts or the bagels when we get back. Now, after we've punched it down and let it rest an additional 10 minutes, it's time to shape our bagels. I like to just pour it right out on a parchment covered cookie sheet, and this is what we'll be using to bake them on eventually, and shape it into a log. Now I find it easier to shape into a log and get even pieces. We're going to make 12 bagels out of this. So I try to get it nice and even, and then I like to take a knife and just cut through the dough. So there's half, and then if I do half again, that's fourths, and then each one of these fourths I need to make 3 out of. Kind of reshape it so that they're even, and cut it into thirds. Each one of these should be about 3 ounces. Now you can take your food scale and weigh them out. I'm not that particular on getting them perfect. If they look really tiny, like this one on the end, I'll just steal some from one that looks a little exceptionally big. But I'm sure the people that make the bagels in the bagel factories don't weigh, well, they might, but I'm not going to weigh every single bagel to make sure they're the exact same size. This one looks a little fat. Take a little bit from that one, a little bit from this one to make this baby one. And now we are going to roll these into a ball. And you want to make sure you kind of tuck creases underneath. Get them into a nice ball shape. That's how you can kind of tell when you find one that's a little bigger, just by the feel of your hands, how much space it takes up in them. Usually they pretty much fill up the inside cup part of your hand. Any of the raisins that fall out, just poke them right back in. And we're just about got our 12 balls. The next part, you're going to take one of the balls and kind of roll it out a little flat. I just poke my finger down through the middle, and then using a finger and a thumb and a couple of fingers, you're going to start making that bagel shape. Now you want the hole in the middle to be at least 2 fingers big when you start, because it is going to shrink as it cooks. So if you don't get it at least a couple fingers round, then you won't have a hole in the middle of your bagel. So you want to make them, and they're going to double just about maybe a third in size again. So there's my bagel, and I'm going to repeat this with the remaining 11 balls. And then when they're done, we're going to cover them with a towel, the same damp towel, and let them rest for another 10 minutes. And then we'll be back. So we've got our pot on a rolling boil. We've let them rest for 10 minutes after we made them, and now we're going to put them in and boil them for 2 minutes on each side. Meanwhile, you want to preheat your oven to 425. I know mine says 475, but if you've watched my videos before, you know my oven is 50 degrees hot, so you want it at 425. So we're going to drop them in about 4 or 5 at a time, depending on the size of your pot. You don't want them to run into each other or stick to each other. I have a fairly big pot, so I can do 6 of them at a time on the high boil. And then you want to set your timer for 2 minutes. And when they're done, you'll flip them and cook them for an additional 2 minutes on the other side. And then we're going to drain them over a towel on a cookie rack until we do the other batch. And then we'll be back. Now that we've boiled all of our bagels for 2 minutes on each side, and we've let them drain and get all of the drips off, I'm going to lightly sprinkle some cornmeal on my parchment paper, just so that any little bit or residual of moisture will keep them from sticking to the parchment paper. We're going to put them on the cookie sheet and bake them for 18 to 20 minutes. The bottoms should start to turn a nice golden brown when they're done, and then we'll be ready to enjoy our nice hot bagels. All right, we'll be right back. And here we have our platter of finished cinnamon raisin bagels, perfect for a Easter brunch or any other Sunday or Monday or Tuesday at your house that you'd like to have a special treat. I like them plain. My husband likes to put a little bit of whole food plant-based cream cheese on them, which will be in an upcoming video as soon as I get it perfected. In today's Meaningful Meetups, you'll see a link to a survey that I'm doing so that you and I can come together for some live sessions where we can do some question and answers, share some shortcuts, some tricks of the trade, how we store things, and just interact with each other a little bit. The survey is very quick. It asks you what day and what time is best for you for me to go live. Also, it'll give you a place where you can submit questions ahead of time, so while we're waiting for everybody to jump on, those dead first 3 or 4 minutes, I can answer the questions that have been pre-submitted. I hope you enjoy these bagels as much as my family does. And remember, if you like these videos, you can find more of them here and here. And please hit that subscribe button and give us a thumbs up. And remember, until next time, plants are the best medicine.